Thank you. This is only our second remote meeting, so I'll ask everyone please to be patient as we continue to learn a new format. And thank you, Kevin, for guiding us through. Is there anything, Kevin, that you want to announce to people about this meeting in the format?
No, again, I think it's important that the call-in users just identify themselves for the record, and everything else I leave to you.
Thank you. I'm going to begin with a roll call of the members of the zoning board. I am Jeannie Goldberg. I am chairperson of the zoning board. And we have Patty Kelly, who is vice chairperson. Joe Mayone.
Here.
Tim Scott, who's here. And Holly Strutt, who is our alternate. We may or may not be joined.
I'm here, Jeannie.
We have been joined by Henry Rua. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you. Welcome.
Since we have more than 3 members present, I am officially calling a quorum of this meeting. So we may begin. I'm going to ask everyone, please, to identify yourself by name before you speak. This is necessary for the legally required recording and transcription of the meeting. The transcription may be somewhat confusing and amusing because sometimes they don't get the names right, but we will all go with it. I am going to designate Holly Strutt, our alternate, to join the regular board for this meeting, as Henry Rua, our regular board member, was not present for any of the 2020 Verizon cell tower presentations. And speaking of that, the only application for tonight's meeting is, correct me if I'm not getting this right, Scott, Tarpon Towers 2, LLC, and Cellco Partnership, ZBA Verizon Wireless, who propose to install and operate a 120-foot monopole tower structure with related equipment on the land of Mount Marion Fire Department at 766 Kings Highway in Saugerties. Tonight, we are going to begin with SECRA, since no decisions can be made without the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Everyone should have received the SECRA Environmental Assessment Form, EAF, that was prepared by Dan Schuster. The first step in SECRA is a classification. I would like to make the motion that the SECRA classification for this action is unlisted. Is there a second? Can you unmute, Patty?
This is Patty. I will second that.
Is there any discussion on this? Then I'm going to do a roll call vote. Patty?
Yes.
Joe? Oops, Joe is muted also. Kevin, can you unmute Joe? Okay. You can signify by raising your hand if you can't get unmuted. Okay, Joe is waving. I assume Tim?
Yes.
Yes. Holly,
Yes.
and I vote yes. It's passed. The secret classification is unlisted. Okay, so now we go on to the secret designation. On page 4, number 10 of the EAF is the historic part, which includes the visual study and analysis. Is someone here representing whoever did the analysis? Or Mr. Wilson, are you speaking to this?
Sure, this is Scott Olson. I can certainly speak to this.
Okay,
So, because we don't have Steve Matthews here, correct? I didn't see him in this. Correct. So are we looking at the draft secret resolution, number 10, you said?
yes,
So we, as you know, we completed the balloon test.
yes.
Submitted the results of that test, which show the locations from which the balloons or tower will be visible. And then we did simulations to show you in those locations where there is visibility, just what it will look like. So I believe the planning board should have that document in its possession. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. And overall, the visibility was fairly minor. Just given that we're talking about a 120-foot tower, there are some locations from which it's visible. And, one of the locations, I had it here, is the historical, I think it's the Cockburn House. I believe that's what we're talking about. You can see it, but the visibility, the fact that you can see it doesn't mean that it's a imposing structure. In fact, if you look where the tower is, you can also see right in the foreground somewhat from where the tower is, the high tension tower power lines that run through your town. So this, to me, the structure that we're showing is not, it's not a major intrusion on the overall surrounding area.
Patty, can you unmute yourself? Or Kevin, can you unmute Patty, please?
I think I was, but
Nope, you just muted again.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, I'm just stepping out to grab my balloon test.
okay,
Hold on, I'll be right back.
okay. Mr. Olson, I had one thing that I picked up. It's number 17, the Kierstead House.
Okay. I'm trying to get to that one.
Okay. They said the direction facing was southwest.
Okay.
I'm not sure which compass they were using. The camera was facing due east.
Their special.
The tower would be due west. So I don't think they would see the balloons across the river. They would have
You're
to.
talking about photo number 17, correct?
Correct.
At the intersection of Glennery Boulevard and Eastern Parkway.
No,
That's the one
I
I'm
must be
looking at.
using an old list. I'm talking about the Kierstead House.
Okay. Do you know which photo that is?
It will
I'll
take me a
scroll
moment.
through.
Unfortunately, they didn't give us a new list with
Oh,
numbers.
I'm working off of their photo simulation that we submitted,
Right.
but it talks about. I'm scrolling through quickly.
It is P5, as a matter of fact.
Okay, 5. I'm
Yes.
going the wrong way then. Okay, so yeah, I see what you're talking about, looking southwest from 119 Main.
No, they were looking due east at the
Okay,
river.
so are the, you know what, I wasn't there. Were they looking in the correct direction? Or is that a typo?
The school is directly across the street on the eastern side, Main Street.
Okay,
So I would just suggest perhaps they correct their compass. And I think Patty had a couple other things.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. On, well, first of all, on S27 and P27, it's the picture of the firehouse with their current tower.
yes,
How high is the current tower? And I think in one of your documents, it said 80 feet. Do you know offhand the exact height of that tower?
so I thought it was about 80 feet, give or take. I don't know if one of the gentlemen from the fire department knows better, but I was always told it was about 80 feet.
Okay, because I'm looking at the pictures and I'm looking at the balloon test, and the tower is supposed to be 120, the new tower is supposed to be 124, and they look very close to the same size, to the same height. So I was just wondering if,
So and I'm looking at the tower, both of those the picture and the simulation, and it looks to me like on top of the existing tower,
there's an
there's
antenna.
an Omni Yagi antenna that's quite large. So the balloon does go above the top of the tower. So I'm not,
So are you saying
Well,
that, are you saying,
this is Dan Schuster. I think part of the reason that you get that picture is that the fire station's tower is closer to the point where the camera is taking the picture, so the perspective is different. Plus, the proposed tower is not only further away, but is somewhat lower elevation, and that's what causes that impression that the existing tower looks higher. But I believe that it's correct.
all right.
thank you, Dan.
So now let's go to S34 and P34.
Okay,
On S34, it says the proposed installation will not be visible from this location. And the exact same photograph is on P34, and there's the balloon.
yeah, that's
Even though it says it will not be visible.
that's obviously a typo because they show you the simulation, so we can have them correct P34.
Yes, please.
But the important thing is you see F34, which shows you what it will look like. But we still will make that correction.
Dan Schuster again, while we're on those kind of things. Photo P11 indicates that you can see there's both balloons, the marker balloon and the one at the height of the tower are visible, but it says that the installation will be visible, but there is no simulation showing what it would look like.
Correct. I didn't see a simulation. I didn't know if that's something they were supposed to simulate or not. I'd have to ask Steve.
If you can see the tower, it requires a simulation. I don't think it's going to have a major impact, but for the record, I think it ought to be accurate.
That's not hard to do. That's fine.
This is Holly Strutt. I just have a question about the balloon test. In some pictures, I see two balloons, but not in all. What's the second balloon?
So at the request of the town, two balloons were flown. One balloon was considered a marker balloon, and that was flown at a height of 200 feet. The the balloon that was at a lower height was flown at the height of the tower, which is 120 feet. It's pretty standard industry methodology to use two balloons so that you have a marker balloon, because sometimes when you're out in the field, you kind of need that extra marker balloon to just see where the facility is and to be able to identify it. So in this case, the town chose 200 feet for the marker balloon.
Sarah, I saw you nodding. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I just was agreeing, if you will, with Dan about the perspective of the photo and the existing tower. And yes, the existing tower is 80 feet, plus or minus maybe a foot. And then there is an Omni, which I have been told is approximately 20 feet tall. So yeah, it's, and then the perspective of the photo, yes.
Could you define Omni for me, please?
Omni antenna is a very thin, tall antenna. So it's approximately 3 or 4 inches round. It's actually like a round antenna, but only 3 or 4 inches tall or wide, excuse me. And then it can be from 10 to 20 feet tall.
Is there any other discussion on any part of the EAF? I don't hear anything. In that case, I would like to make the motion that this application receives a negative declaration. And I will read a little bit about this. It's based on the information currently available to the zoning board and the above analysis, which is the analysis that is contained within this EAF, and the evaluation of all relevant and probable environmental impacts related to the activities and actions herein proposed. The town of Saugerties hereby determines that there will be no significant adverse environmental impacts and no environmental impact statement, EIS, will be required. You'll be very happy to hear that, Mr. Olson.
Yes.
For the development of the Tarpon Towers 2 telecommunications facility. So I make this motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any discussion about the motion? If not, once again, we're going to do a roll call. Patty? You are muted again.
Geez, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Tim
Yes.
and Holly.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The neg deck is established. Okay, we are now ready for what some of us have called the Monroe Doctrine. It is actually the Monroe decision. Dan, George, Scott, would anyone like to start the discussion on this?
Well, I'd be happy to. This is Dan. This is a decision of over 20 years ago that was made in a case where the city of Rochester took the Monroe County to court over an airport that was proposed in the city, and it went to the state's highest court, which determined that the previous standard, which was basically exempted governmental entities from the control of the zoning law of other towns, and set a new process whereby towns or communities should weigh the interests of both parties and determine whether or not zoning should apply to the proposed action or not. The town zoning law, when it was amended in 2008, included specific reference to that decision under the Zoning Board of Appeals powers, and gave the Zoning Board of Appeals the assignment to determine in similar situations whether the process under the Monroe decision was appropriate or not. About 10 years ago, in the case of the proposed tower at the Centerville Firehouse, the Zoning Board of Appeals determined that the decision did apply and that the proposed tower was, in the words of the legislation, immune from the local zoning law. What's being proposed tonight is a similar decision, which would indicate that this proposal, because the fire department is a separate governmental entity and the interests have been balanced, to determine that it would be immune from the provisions of the town zoning law. What the planning board is, what the zoning board of appeals is has decided to do, or could decide to do, is prior to making an official determination, to hold a public hearing, to see if there are any different opinions from the public or other town entities. So I think the board tonight is considering scheduling a public hearing to hear opinions, if there are any, on that subject, and then to act or not on the determination that the site is immune from the local zoning law.
George, are you here? Okay. Because I know, Mr. Olson, you had,
Can you hear me? Hang on. Can you hear me?
yes, this is George.
Yes, it's George.
Good.
I've
Yes,
been
we
here all
can.
the time. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, no, what Dan said, I'll just encapsulate very quickly, is that the purpose tonight on the issue of the Monroe case law is to have a hearing to determine if the public and other parties of interest have any concerns about the proposed Monroe determination by this board. It has not yet been determined by the ZBA, but the ZBA is considering the proposed findings and the determination. But that is a point where the public will come in and have the ability to have a hearing. And I believe that the chair lady will be able to discuss the date and time. I do not want to take the wind out of her sails on those matters.
Mr. Olson?
Yes, thank you. I guess so I had a question, obviously, in my email,
Yes.
and I think that Mr. Schuster clarified what, you answered my question, basically. And so if the ZBA is going to hold a public hearing, I guess the only thing that I would request would be if the public hearing is, when the public hearing is held, can it be noticed not only for this issue on the balancing test, but also on the project in general, so that if the ZBA were to decide later that the balancing test doesn't apply, that we don't have to then have another public hearing. So like if we could do it all at once, that would be, I think, my client's preference. Does that make sense?
George?
The purpose of the public hearing is to get input so that we can make a determination based upon all the factors and evidence that are presently before the board. With that said, I believe that that would be appropriate to make a decision once this board considers all the information it has, especially from the hearing of the public.
And I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding. What I'm trying to just avoid is having to have a second public hearing. So let's say there's a public hearing on the County of Monroe balancing test, and let's just say the ZBA decides, oh no, this has to go forward through the rest of the ZBA process. And then they feel the need to schedule a second public hearing. My thought is, could we just have one public hearing right now, notice it for the balancing test in the alternative? It's also just about the project. You can say whatever you want. Let's get the people out, assuming we're going to be in public, one time and have it done that way. So we don't have to then schedule a second public hearing.
Jeannie, may I say something?
Please.
Mr. Olson, I think you've been through public hearings with us, I think, before, but you will know that the subject of the public hearing rarely dissuades the public from saying and asking the questions that they want. And so I expect once the cards go out to the properties around there, they will have other questions, not just about Monroe, but all of the elements of Monroe, some of the assertions that would be made. So I think we will be covering a lot of that, a lot of the things that you're talking about within the context of Monroe. And we haven't discussed as a board the Monroe thing yet. We're talking about it tonight. So I don't think that people in the members of the public who come to the online meeting will be shy about expressing other things other than the Monroe.
And I agree 100%, but I just want to protect the record so that we have the notice. So let's say, again, I think worst case, I get paid to think worst case scenario. Let's say we have someone who really hates this thing, comes out, but you only noticed it for one purpose. And then you may have to notice it for a second purpose. Even if you hear all their comments, the law can be, subtle and a pain at times, where if we don't have it properly noticed for both purposes, we'd have to come back and do it again. So I'm just trying to avoid that. That's all.
George, is it possible to have the notice say that the hearing is for discussion of the siting of a cell tower at the firehouse and a discussion of the Monroe Doctrine, so that it covers?
Yeah, I see what. Yeah, I don't see that as a problem. It obviously gives the public a fuller attitude as to what's going to be discussed at the proposed July 6th hearing date. And I think that would be acceptable. I think that Mr. Olson, if he's good with that, maybe perhaps some other language he could suggest.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Anyone else?
Jeannie, are we going to be discussing the contents of the draft Monroe balancing act now? Or are we going to save that until after this crux of this meeting is over? How are you planning to do that?
It is up to the will of the board. I would also like to give Mr. Gray a chance to speak to anything about the RF, radio frequency engineering, because we don't want Mr. Crosby sitting here all alone and not having anything to do.
Well, I have a question about one of the things in the balancing act that maybe
Please.
maybe can add to that. In the alternative location for the facility, particularly that last line where it says, after careful evaluation, it has been determined that viable alternative locations are not available and or potential alternatives would have greater impacts on the community. I don't feel comfortable that we can say that because we never tested that. We took the assertion of Mr. Crosby that that was the only site that was going to work, but we never had an opportunity to ask him to test that with his with the frequencies he says he has to use at some of the other sites that are close by, but in the industrial zone. So we haven't really tested that, whether or not there are other alternatives. So that I would not be comfortable saying that line in there. No other alternatives feasible because we don't know.
Ron, are you there?
I see Ron twice and unmuted. Ron, are you there?
It's a long way from Florida. Well, Mr. Crosby, would you like to speak to what Patty just said?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The industrial zone is not located inside the search area. And that's critical for us because, this is a smaller macro site. This is not typical for, what you've seen us build over the last 10 to 20 years where we have a large site, 150, 180 feet tall up on top of a mountain that has that type of latitude where you can move and shift that significantly. And I can appreciate the perspective that it may not seem like it's that far, but it is that far, especially when considering the coverage objectives that we've detailed. And we've also detailed the frequencies that we're utilizing that are critical to the success of the site. So when we shift this site to the industrial zone is simply not situated properly for us to do that. So we have discussed that at the last meeting in person in pretty good detail. So, I can talk about it more if you'd like, but.
No, I understand. You made assertions that the frequency you're using and that Verizon now tends to like to use smaller towers. But I don't mean to seem cruel about this, but I'm taking your assertion as that, but we never tested it. In other times we have tested it by actually running your simulation from another spot to see where we would be lacking in coverage and so forth. And I know from some of your other projects in other areas where there has been an area that wouldn't be covered, you've used the microcell to make up the difference. So, but we never tested that. We have no idea what it would look like from the industrial zone. So we have no way of, so I'm just saying, I would not be comfortable saying that there are no alternative locations because we don't know other than what you have said.
Scott, we haven't submitted anything else in that regard. I'm asking that as a question because, I know that as part of our process, we look at a lot of these different scenarios. So I know that I myself, I've looked at it before, but I don't know what's been submitted and what's not.
There were no other towers in anywhere that you could put anything on. I wasn't looking at something that was a tower. If you have to build a tower at the firehouse, you'd have to build a tower somewhere else as well. So, for example, there's property on Industrial Road, which is really not far from the firehouse. And what I was suggesting when I talked to you originally is why would that not be applicable, even if you had to make the tower a little higher? And you said that, and you made a case that Verizon doesn't like to use the large towers, and you have frequencies that you use, and they're directed in a certain direction. But I would have just liked to have seen it. I think, just say, look at it and see what that visualization looked like from Industrial Road.
So, another question that I would have is, we're talking about a hypothetical scenario. So this isn't a viable alternative where we have an existing lease and ground control where the site is actually, meeting setbacks. And I understand that it's a permitted zone, but we're talking about a completely hypothetical alternative location.
That's the hypothetical I spoke to you at that meeting about. Yes. So all I'm saying is that the last line of that section of the Balancing Act, I have a problem with because we didn't explore alternatives. And to say that there are no alternatives when we never explored them, other than the firehouse, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think it'll affect anything. I just don't want to, wouldn't sign off on that.
What if, excuse me,
Misrepresentation.
what if maybe that language was revised so that it's the applicant has, asserted, or some language in there that that this is the only viable alternative, and so that
We're the ZBA, so this is our document that we're putting out. So I don't think that we should even suggest that there are no viable alternatives when we don't know that. We are assuming, based on your assertions, that that is the case, but I don't think that we need to put it in there on our behalf as if we're making that statement, and we are not making that statement. I mean, I'm not. I can't speak for the whole ZBA. We haven't met since then, so.
yeah, and maybe Ron can chime in at some
Said,
point.
I'm here. Why can't you hear me?
Hello?
There he is.
Is that Ron? Ron just wrote and said that he is here, but we can't hear him.
Did he check the audio on the, is he muted?
He's not muted. He's showing up twice for some reason. I don't know if everybody else sees that.
Is he the 203 area code?
I have it. I see his name down there.
Oh,
See his name,
Jeannie, may I say something?
please.
Back Patty's statement up. Patty, you're 100% correct. We've discussed this a number of times. Every meeting that we've had with, right, to go up to where John Greco's house is. There's a road that goes right in there. It's probably 800 feet up from the firehouse. It's higher than the firehouse. Vacant property, and it's in the industrial zone. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. We suggested this to them right off the bat. We suggested 2 other times. They don't want to explore it. So for them to say there's no other alternative, I agree with you 100%.
so
It
I'm
can't
sorry.
be said because they never wanted to explore it. They were stuck on Marion.
I think we did explore things. I think at the last meeting, we explained what the rationale was for being in the area.
Yeah, you explained why you couldn't do it, but you didn't, you explained why you can't do it. That's not the same thing as going and seeing what it looks like.
But we explained why we couldn't do it, and we explained it to Ron. So again, you have our RF consultant, and so that's why if Ron could join us at some point, it would be great. Whether he agrees with us or not, we would just like to hear what his thoughts are. But that's the normal process. We explained why we chose a specific site, and when you said, well, what about this and this? And Mike Crosby said, I hear what you're saying, but here's why we can't do that. And then it's up to Ron to look at it and see whether or not it makes sense.
Another point that we had actually brought up at the last meeting in person was the other sites that we have planned in the within your municipality, and that we're looking forward to getting those sites along far enough in the development process so we can share that information with you. Those other neighboring sites are critical to the positioning. So when we're running new sites in parallel with each other, we can't just shuffle things around, and then it disrupts the plan. So there's multiple things that are working together, and what dictates a lot of that is not our personal preferences, it's the terrain that exists in your area, and it's the location of the existing sites that are already on air. So for these sites
Hey,
to work
Ron,
properly.
I called in again. Can you hear me?
I'll let Ron talk. Since we got Ron, I'll shut up.
Great.
Give Ron a second. Go ahead, Ron.
Ron, were you able to hear what I was just talking about? This is Patty.
I've been listening to the whole meeting, and what
Okay.
I did is I re-entered again.
Okay.
But you can hear me now.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's the greatest Verizon line of the world. Can you hear me now? And I'm delighted that you can hear me. For the record, my name is Ronald Grave. I'm the licensed professional engineer in New York State who reviewed this application on behalf of the town. My opinions are consistent and unbiased because I have nothing to do with this application. My only purpose is to advise this board on the evidence that was presented to it. With that, I will begin. If you will recall, on February 19th, 2020,
Can't
I
understand.
sent an opinion letter to your board reviewing the application. And in that opinion letter, I noted that indeed, Mr. Crosby had justified the need for the site on the lack of capacity on adjacent cell sites. And he did it, as I said here, he called it, I said is quite good, because it was, and there's no doubt about it. The existing sites, the serving sites in this area are exhausted in the coverage they provide, not only in the 700 megahertz LTE, but because of its incredibly reduced coverage, the 2100 megahertz LTE. But Mr. Crosby never talked about the 1900 megahertz LTE, which they are now refarming to LTE, which covers a little bit better than the 2100. So we looked at just two frequencies that Verizon has, but as a result of the passing of CDMA, that was their old technology, 1900 is being refarmed. But I didn't worry about that. I basically said, yeah, in fact, the same may be seen in these types of graphs. And my ultimate comment was, the data throughput evidence supports the claim need. However, there remain other issues associated with the application that must be carefully evaluated before this site justification can be recommended to your board. And primarily, that had to do with the location of the site and the incredibly small search lane, being that there was no scale on the map, which is not in conjunction with good engineering practice. If you submit evidence, it has to have a scale. So we were determined that it looks like a 1/4 mile radius, which is quite small. And by the way, this is not what you call one of these sites that I reviewed for Verizon, most recently in, I believe it was East Fishkill, or one of those places, LaGrange, where it was what was called a small cell. And those are sites that are 80 feet high, 70 feet high, 60 feet high. This site is 120 feet high with a center of radiation of 116 feet, I guess it is, 4 up, 4 down. So I pointed out the fact that there may be another area that can provide. Now remember, I'm not a planner, I'm not a zoner, I'm just an engineer. And when I look at something and say, well, and someone says to me, there's another area just up the street that may be within our requirements. So I looked at that, and that was the industrial zone. And I think there was a place they parked school buses there at the end of a road. It looked pretty deserted to me. And I said, well, let's look at that. And I suggested to your board that propagation analyses be done from that site to see if it was different. And I never saw those because after this Monroe Doctrine and all this other stuff came up, it appears that this was no longer an issue in the town and you were done. And my job as an engineer is to tell you about the application before you. So this really
Never
came
looked
home
at
when I finally got a copy of the minutes of a meeting that was held, it's right here in front of me. By the way, we don't have cameras in Florida. You know, we just wear shorts and T-shirts and we sweat. March 2nd, there's a meeting where Patty, and Patty, I don't know your last name,
Kelly.
asked terrific questions about this, and the answers were troubling to me because it was the first time I'd seen this when we talked about alternative sites, the location of the site. There is no evidence in the record. Now, do I care, by the way, if you look at my report, that first report of February 19th, I said, hey, you know what? The fire department site looks pretty good. There's a tower there, and it's a piece of junk. It really is. That's a Roan 25. It's barely standing. And you know what? Put something else up there that would be good. It'll be benefit for the town. Notwithstanding that fact, that I opined that was a pretty good site, it didn't answer the question that I thought your board charged me with, was determining everything about this application that was true and correct and reflected the need for the facility. That's my job. I have no bias whatsoever. So I pointed out that there should be alternative propagations just to see what it is, notwithstanding what Mr. Crosby just said about, terrain and everything. We have no idea. None of the maps submitted were topographic maps. None of the maps submitted indicated anything about terrain. They were just a bunch of Rand McNally maps or satellite view maps, useless in a critical evaluation. And then the question about how big is how big is the search ring? This is the smallest search ring I've ever seen. And today or yesterday, whatever it was, Patty asked me some questions. So I sent her, by the way, of the hundreds of Verizon applications I have reviewed, and I mean that in hundreds in my limited career, this is the smallest. I submitted ones that were done by Mr. Crosby, Mr. Karam, and Mr. Crosby, and in those I showed you that the search ring is not a ring. I call these irregular polygons. And you saw those in LaGrange. It's an irregular polygon with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. That's why it's a polygon. In LaGrange, New York, another one, it's an ellipse. And so the tendency of this site to have such a small search ring was troubling to me, because when you want to use a site, and I don't blame them, there was a tower there. That's what you call low-hanging fruit. That's what you do. You just say, well, this is the only site. Well, hey, I asked for propagation maps, and then there was something in here about, yeah, we did this, but it didn't look good. Yeah, well, where are they in the record? I'd like to see them in the record, because what you're doing is correct. The Monroe Doctrine say this is a great site. I am just looking for engineering purity here, because that's my job. And the board can make whatever decision it wants. It doesn't trouble me. I don't live there. I don't care. What really troubles me, though, underlying, is that this site is what's called a build-to-suit site. Tarpon Towers went to Verizon and said, hey, we're putting up some towers. You got any places you got to hold? I see this all the time. Remember, I owned a tower. I no longer own that tower. And I work with every carrier understanding how they work. This is a build-to-suit site, and Tarpon's job would be to build a site that can support 2, 3, you can't support 4 anymore because there are only 3 now, but at least 3 carriers. So at 120 feet, and by the way, I wouldn't call this a small site. No, the small sites are 80 feet high, 60 feet high. This is still a minor macro site. Verizon at 116 feet center of radiation. Maybe you can get another carrier, not in the trees, to go 10 feet below their center of radiation. Below that, forget about it. Nobody's going to want it. It's going to be in the trees. But a recent FCC decision, as Attorney Olsenwald knows, is that once the tower is built, the applicant can increase the height of that tower by 10%, limited to 20 feet, without any further approval by any local board. So a tower that's 120 feet high could overnight become, let's see, 20 plus 12, 132 feet. Now, that would be perfect, because then that would give Tarpon at least 3 carriers. So that's all I bring out here. I really don't care. But before you do something, you should at least vet this. And if it's okay with the Monroe Doctrine, that's fine with me. But if you go to some kind of public meeting and I'm on the record as saying that this is fine and it's been totally justified, for the record, that's not correct. Read my report of February 19th. And that's all I wanted to talk about here because I had no idea these words were in there. And I saw that, I said, wow, I thought you guys were done with me. Well, I'm done now. So that's it. I mean, I've told you, I've spilled my beans. Just so on the record, I have reflected a professional engineer's report subject to the requirements of the New York State Education Department, that it is true, accurate, and correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
I'd like to address a couple of those items, if that's all right to do so.
Yes,
So with,
please.
with all respect to Mr. Grafe, I've heard this a couple of times now, so I have to respond, Ron. But the search ring document does have a scale. It has a legend. It's in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. It's there. So I don't know what the, you may have to zoom in to see it. I mean, there's a lot of details on these slides. So the ring itself is about 2,000 feet in diameter. So it's a pretty good sized ring for a
Mike?
smaller macro site, as we've mentioned.
Mike,
Yes,
all we got was a printed copy. We didn't get it on the computer. We got a printed copy.
that's unfortunate.
Can't
And
see it on
I'm
the
sorry
printed
that you
copy?
can't see. I'm sorry that you
Can't
can't see it on the print.
computer. I cannot see it, and I commented on that. There is no scale.
I'm looking at it right now, the document that I submitted. I can see it, like my hand in front of my face. So I mean, I don't know. I don't understand why there's a problem with seeing the scale, but it is there. I'm providing that information to counter that remark because it is in fact there. And as I mentioned, the ring is about 2,000 feet in diameter, which is a relatively decent sized ring. This is not a big macro site, and it's not without adjacent sites, and it's not without adjacent planned sites. So this is an area of concentration where we're densifying the network, and we're trying to do so in a way that we're not, coming into the middle of your town and putting a 200-foot or 250-foot tall tower up with a light on top. We're trying to do it in a delicate fashion so that we can try to be good neighbors in the town. So when
Why
we
didn't you
do
crop
that,
the
we
other
don't.
side?
I'm sorry.
Why didn't you crop the other site that you say in the question and answer that was asked to you? What about alternatives? Why was the search limited to a quarter mile, 1,000 feet in radius? I think, let's see, 5,280 feet is a mile, a quarter of a mile in what was it, in diameter? Is that what you said?
It's about 2,000 feet in diameter, yes.
2,000 feet, so that's 1,000 feet. So 1,000 and 5,280, that's a fifth of a mile. And all these other search rings I submitted that you have prepared are significantly bigger and also not circles. But then you said that it wouldn't cover it. Well, where's the record? If there was a record, I could say, you're right. You know what? It does a terrible job.
Well, I was leading up
As I
to
said-
that, so I appreciate you bringing that up
Okay,
again.
sorry. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so I've heard that multiple times, so thank you, Ron. So I have run alternate analysis on the industrial zone for hypothetical sites, and that's why I was deferring to Scott. I was trying to find out from Scott if that's been submitted before, because it's something that we've looked at, early last year. So this is not a new question. We've done this, we've looked at it, and we've determined that our high band, our 2 gigahertz, whether it be 1900 or 2100 megahertz, because as Ron knows, they're very similar in propagation, are not capable, in regardless, all of the frequencies need to cover the footprint of our network. They're not capable of serving the high density or higher density residential area to the southwest of the ring. So we detailed that in the last meeting and when I was there in person. So I have provided that. I don't know if it went to the town or not. I apologize. That was why I was asking Scott if that document had been submitted or not. If it's not, then I would defer to Scott for guidance on how he wants to handle that. So I certainly appreciate the comments. I don't disrespect the question at all. And we've looked at that many times over a long period of time to get to where we are today. So I don't think that the question is out of line at all either. So, but I just don't know what's been submitted because I'm the engineer, and Scott and others are very intensely involved with all the applications and what paperwork goes in and what doesn't. So I apologize that I don't have that personal information about everything that has been submitted.
Mike, this is Patty again. If you've done the simulations from the industrial zone, and Scott, if you have them, forward them to us. And if they don't work, then we can say, we saw them, they don't work, and we can truthfully state that no alternative was applicable in this situation. But to say that without that documentation, we as a ZBA would have difficulty doing that to the constituents. So if you've done it, that's great. We didn't see it, and it would be good to get it. And if you have-
I'm looking as I'm listening. I don't see that I have that information. I'll double check. We'll regroup and double check to see what we have.
Just to send it to us.
Well, again,
I'd
if
say it was January, February of 2019 is when we were looking at that. So that was quite a ways back. And I'll look and see what I've got as well. But I know 100% for sure that we've done that and looked at it. So I'm not stating that it doesn't work, just to asking you to take my word for it. I have looked at it. I realize that is asking you to take my word for it, but if you haven't seen it, so, we'll regroup with Scott
yeah,
and make sure that that information is made available.
May I just say that you didn't come to us until May 20th? The first application was May 20th, 2019. And you just said you did this in January, February so that was before there was any application or?
Right.
It
It
when we were
would be
preparing.
because we do the due diligence prior to submitting the application.
And
So,
then you send it to us.
well, again, I don't necessarily have it. We'll regroup. We'll figure out. Mike says he has it. We'll get it to you if he has it.
There was nothing sent to us on that.
That would be very helpful. That would be helpful because honestly, when people hear about the project, the first thing they say is, why isn't it in the industrial zone? It's only right across the road in the industrial zone. Why isn't there? We'd like to be able to show them why. That would be helpful. That would ease that problem right off the bat for people who might have questions about it. That would be
Understood, and we will regroup and send you what we have. But I am looking at what we submitted, and I don't know what Ron has. And Ron, maybe the heat's really getting to you down there, but I do see a scale on what Mike's talking about too. So maybe you got something without a scale, but I see a scale.
If you'll recall, Scott, you sent me a PDF, and I asked for, could I have an original copy? And I didn't get that. I got a PDF. And you know how PDFs are, especially on these maps that I could not find a scale. And I commented, I think, in my report that I can't see a scale. And I estimated that it was 1/4 of a mile. That was my estimate based
Okay.
on applications. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get so excited here. It's just that when I saw things in there that I believed were in my report that were not answered, but it sounded like they were answered. I mean, I was saying, well, did I get, what happened? Maybe the conversation, and by the way, the heat hasn't gotten to me because it's lovely down here.
I was just trying to be,
I know you were, and I think that's fun. And I think the most of all you guys, it's just that I have my responsibility. And I get very excited about that when I do a report and my report stands. What did I say? Yes, the site was justified, but there isn't a possible alternative. And I said the board may very well ask the applicant to evaluate that site. Now, if the board didn't, then you know what? I'm out of the woods there. But I did say that because
you did.
I know
You absolutely. Again, I was
concerned about it.
reading and listening, and I read through your review again, and you did say that the board may want to. And then we did have conversations with the board in, I think it was March, early March, before this madness took over. And we had discussions. I think we were in February, we were there, but Mike wasn't there. He was in Texas, if I recall correctly.
Right.
So that's why we had Mike come in March, because Patty asked a bunch of questions.
as I want to do.
Can I ask Jeannie a question this is Holly Strutt. Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
Sally.
So, Scott and Mike, I honestly can't remember if I asked this of you before or only in a board meeting after one of our meetings, but there was at one time a book of maps that showed coverage if the tower was at the fire department and what areas would get more capacity versus what would get more coverage. And would love to see those maps generated for a site in the industrial zone. Because what we keep being told is if you put the tower in the industrial zone, we won't be able to do as well with the coverage and capacity. And why haven't we seen a map then showing us what the coverage and capacity would be if the site were down the street in the industrial zone?
Well, one answer, and I'm going to stop, Mike, I should learn to shut up, but one answer is you're not going to see a map for capacity. It doesn't work that way. So
Yes, with the various coloring and shading.
yeah, that's totally coverage. That is not capacity in any respect. But again, I'm not the engineer, so Mike, sorry.
We do have, you know, like Holly, what we were talking about before is the fact that we had actually looked at that and it appears that it was internally and wasn't something that was submitted. So what the goal is here is to regroup after the meeting. We'll discuss this, find out, you know, where that, you know, that documentation now is more than a year old. So we want to take a look and
Okay.
that is, but we do have a standard format for that. It's called the delta analysis. So I'm hoping that for the next meeting, we're going to be able to provide that delta analysis for you in the best way to visually understand the difference between what we've proposed and what would be available in that industrial zone. That's the goal, is to be able to provide that.
And I have one question, if I could.
I appreciate that.
Can I just
I
ask a
appreciate that.
follow-up? This document that was proposed to us, I think maybe Scott drafted it, the findings and determinations document. Is that
Yes, I did draft it at the request of the board.
Thank you. We have, I'm sure like Patty has raised this one question or comment on it. There are others. So
Yes.
my question is, first of all, Patty rightly pointed out that we are not yet comfortable saying that there is no alternative. My question is, why can't that sentence just be stricken? What
Exactly.
is our document so is there some objective that you have in what has to be in this document? Or do we should have latitude to modify it?
It's your document.
It's our document.
We can do whatever we want.
Yes, I put together what I thought was a defendable, fairly strong document that could be supported. And obviously, there's always going to be room for discussion, but it's your document. So you can do with it what you wish.
Thank you.
Jane,
Yes,
Jane,
Henry,
can I ask a question?
please, Henry.
I've asked it 3 times that I can remember. I sent you a email on it. I haven't heard it mentioned yet. I want to clarify one thing. And I've asked this. Is the site where the tower at Mount Marion Firehouse owned by Mount Marion Fire Company 100%, or is it on county property?
And if I may, that question was presented to us. We provided a survey. I think I answered it once, maybe twice.
No. You provided a survey, and that line just didn't show exactly where. There's a right of way taking through there. I told you this from the very first time you came in front of us, and all I've asked was very simple for you or whoever your engineers to go to the county and they'll pull a map out and it'll show a right of way taking. Dan, am I explaining this correctly to them? All right. And all I want to know is the tower on Marion Fire Company property or on the county right of way taking.
I am told by our surveyors, the property is located, the tower is located on the Mount Marion Fire Department property.
You have that in writing?
I believe I do. And again, I'm looking for the survey, but the survey will show all that information. And I submitted this information to the town. I'm just looking for it now.
Well,
We do have the copy of the survey, but I think Henry is asking a related question. Is that correct, Henry?
yeah, I mean, I've asked the same question from the very first meeting we had with them. And all I wanted was clarified. And to my knowledge, that's what I asked you. Had it been clarified while I was away? Did it get clarified? Was the question even asked again? I don't know.
So we'll look into it again. I know the question was asked. I know we responded. We didn't hear anything further after that.
So you didn't get an answer? Is that what you're saying?
Nope, no. I said we responded,
Responded to,
answered it. And I'm saying I didn't hear anything further from the ZBA that the issue was still an outstanding issue. In my mind, it was done and over with since we provided the information.
What they provided was a survey that appears to show that the tower is indeed located on the fire department property.
Right, a right of way.
Henry is saying that it is possible that if someone were to go to the county, there might be a right of way that was given by the county to the fire department.
correct.
Is that what you're saying, Henry?
That's 100% correct.
Well, if the county,
Can't believe it.
if the county gave the right of way to the fire department, it's the fire department's property.
Right.
Necessarily. It could
Usually,
be, it could,
Don't go away. We
it could
need
be-
you.
It could be given. I'll tell you exactly why it was given. That was a very bad intersection. So we widened that intersection. We took the intersection down the vertical curve of the intersection. Traffic light got placed there. And that was quite a big drop, ditch, hole, however wording you want to use, on the fire department side. We filled a lot of that in for them as a community gesture because it was the fire department. So that being said, the road was over more. The road was more towards the fire department originally. Okay? We took that and moved that a little bit to the west. And what you're seeing now and what was there prior to, and I'm not talking that long ago, I'm talking maybe 15 years ago. That's where that was county right away on that curve coming from south going north on that curve going onto Glasgow Turnpike. That was all county right away on that curve. So,
Okay, but the lease area is very far from either right of way.
Watson,
So
I got Verizon. We got one bar down here. I'm only 3 miles.
we're trying to help you out.
You won't help them with this tower.
I'm working on it.
Had 4 bars in 1989. So now you got 1 bar. You really advance a lot with Verizon.
Maybe
I'm only maybe 2.5 miles as a crow flies from Mount Marion towards the Hudson River. The most terrible reception we've ever had here.
We are working on that.
Enough of that.
Fortunately,
Can't
we are
solve
working on it.
everything right now.
If I can just
Henry?
clarify, it sounds as if there's a,
Okay,
the
Jamie, I'm
county
sorry.
gave,
I told you my dilemma.
Just 1 minute, please. Scott, may I just ask Henry a question first before he leaves us?
of course,
Henry, you said it was county right of way.
Back,
Is that past tense? Does that mean that it was given to the fire department?
Jeannie, I've been out of there 15 years. Actually, 14 years. I'm sorry, 14 years. It was done when the intersection was changed and what have you. It was probably 17, 18 years ago, 19 years ago. I don't know. But what transpired between, could have, and that's why I keep on asking the question. Was that right away given to the fire company? All I want to make sure is that the tower that they're proposing is on
Fire department.
on fire company property and not on public property.
Well, maybe we should see the deed.
Sorry?
I said maybe Scott can provide the deed for the property.
yeah, we've looked at the deed. I can say affirmatively, this tower It is located on Mount Marion Fire Department property.
All right, give us a letter to that effect then, Scott.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I did, but I just having trouble locating it while I talk at the same time.
Here, better yet, I don't want to put you on the spot. Have your surveyor give us a letter saying that it's on.
Yeah, I'll look
Marion
at the
property.
survey also to see what that says, but
Sure. I mean, that's all I'm looking for.
yeah, I can tell you between Tarpon and Verizon care more than you care that it's on the Mount Marion Fire Department property. And I don't mean to be facetious about that.
No, and that's why I keep on asking the question. I think that everyone concerned should be concerned.
So, no, that's helpful because before I didn't realize it was more of a right-of-way issue. The question was, is this tower going to be located on the Mount Marion Fire Department? So that's what we thought we were addressing. This helps give some further detail and context to your question, so we'll look into it.
Okay.
Before we move on to another subject, Mike, instead of, this is Mike Crosby, this is, if you could send us those industrial zone simulations prior to the next meeting, which the next meeting is going to be a public hearing. We'd like to look at it beforehand. Maybe a public hearing. We'd like to look at it beforehand if we could.
Understood.
Okay, good.
This is Sarah
Just for the
Coleman.
record, what height would those propagation studies be done at?
We, if I recall, I mean, going back more than a year ago, but I believe we compared apples to apples. So if we were going to be proposing 116, we would have proposed a 116 for a comparative analysis. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be relative.
But you're proposing 120.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a
Tower height.
116-foot center line, a 120-foot tip. So in the RF world, when we talk about the heights, it's the actual center line of the radiating element as opposed to the overall height of the tower. So for tower terminology, it would have been a 120-foot tower here. We would have compared a 120-foot tower as an alternate analysis.
And that is reflected in his past analyses, and that's fine. Just to verify that. One last thing I just have to say. I'm very sensitive about this because of the last 3 Verizon hearings that I was involved with. And you can look these up. Phillipstown, New York, Grangeville, New York, and the one that, depending on how you looked at it, it was either Mahopac or Carmel, were Homeland Tower Verizon applications that I was retained on to review them. And all 3 of those went to the court. And all 3 of those then looked at what I said about this. And that's important to me because, and by the way, the towns lost in every 3 of those because they did not rely on what I had said. And also they didn't rely on a lot of things and they were just being ridiculous. But the important thing is that I'm concerned about that because it's part of, yeah, I'm selfish, okay? It's my integrity. And I want to make sure that when you guys make a decision and we have a public meeting or a public hearing or whatever you do next, and someone brings up this fact about the lack of evidence for the determination, that I've given you everything I can. And that's all I'm looking for. And I, as I said, I have no axe to grind with Verizon. Mike Crosby does great work. He does the best applications I've seen. There's no doubt about it. But for me to then say, you bet, Saugerties, we're done. This is good. And that's why I say the town may very well wish to do this. I don't give you directions. It's your choice. But I'm also then, as they say, what do they say? Covering my ass, okay? That I have done the very best I can in giving you the unbiased opinion about this, okay? And thank you very much for listening to me tonight.
Thank you, Ron.
Being here, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
This is Sarah Coleman. I would just like to ask for a clarification. So Patty mentioned that you would like to see simulations from the industrial zone. We're just talking about propagations, though, hypothetical propagations.
Yeah, well, the maps that they did for us for if the tower is the firehouse, let us see where the coverage was and where the coverage gaps were. We want to see the same thing from, say, Industrial Road.
Right.
Tower Road.
or Industrial and Tower Road, both of them actually would be great. And that would give us a comparison, and then we would have alternatives to actually look at and the public to look at.
And by the way, just to add, the best way for Mike to present these, and I know he's done it many times, is to show a base map and then show the proposed coverage from the firehouse at 116 feet AGL at a specific signal strength that he chooses, that he believes he needs for his signal, for his system to work, the minus 105 dBm RSRP best server, or whatever he's doing today. And then overlay over that the coverage of the alternate site with the same height, the same frequency, and the same signal strength, but do it this time in a crosshatch, or some way that someone on a board can look at this and say, oh, wow, the site requested is providing much better coverage in this area, or it's not providing as good a coverage because now it's going to be a hard copy presentation of the two. And sometimes in a meeting, many times in the old days when we used to have meetings, they would do this with transparencies. And you remember this, Mike. You would have a base map, you would underlay, you put on your first coverage, and then you overlay the second coverage. You say, look at that, look at the difference. That's going to be the gold standard in determining the difference of this when you have an actual on paper or on whatever, how you propose to do it, showing the differential between the two coverages, if that's possible for you to do.
That's exactly what we'll do, Ron. It'll be similar to, what you saw for Corbin Farm and LaGrange. So we'll provide a map that will be layered, and the colors will be such that it will be, stoplight type colors where you'll know for sure what's good and what's bad, and you will know where that delta is between what we've proposed and what the alternative location is. So we have done many of these. We've learned, and just to go back to Ron's comment about the legend, I'm frustrated that, we put together pretty good documents, and then, when you get them in a PDF or you get them printed out, you're not able to really truly appreciate the granularity and the detail that we've provided. I know that a lot of information gets lost, and we do try to effort to make sure that we're providing the critical details that are needed. So we'll make sure that as we provide this delta analysis, that is information that's as clear as possible. So thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
We all do.
Yes.
Well, we want to build a relationship with Saugerties. We know that we have other problems in town, as the board has indicated they're aware of, Henry. And we're working on those things, and we're hoping that this site, although we may be going through some ups and downs here, that we're going to be able to build that relationship so that you understand that we're coming into town as a good neighbor. We're trying to help everybody out. We know we have a huge responsibility with the majority, the lion's share of the subscribers that are in this area. So we are here to help, and we're here to try to do it in the most cooperative way possible. But we do have a job to do, and there's a lot invested in trying to move these projects forward. So we're gonna do the best we can to communicate. And this is really the first of a couple that we're going to be talking about soon. Maybe we don't need to go to the ZBA for the others. I don't know that yet. So some are going to be different sizes, but I'm really looking forward to trying to get that full picture in front of the board so that some of the things that I'm trying to articulate today will make a lot more sense. I think for next month's meeting, I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide some more detail so that the pieces of the puzzle make much more sense. Because right now we're asking you to take a look at this piece of the puzzle, and there's only a couple other pieces around it, and you can't see how that picture is coming together just yet. So I'm hoping to provide that information for everybody, and we can build that relationship, and this can be a smooth process, or at least as smooth as possible.
But we will do one site at a time.
Right.
We don't want to overwhelm you.
Just telling you.
Mike, we appreciate that you have a job to do. We get it. But also on the flip side, we have a job to do, and our jobs are not the same. We have a law to follow, and we have a community to be accountable for, and we have a fire department that needs services that we are totally in sync with. And you have a site that's not an ideal site in terms of the setbacks. So, you know, we're not being confrontational just to be confrontational. We're just trying to get all our I's dotted, T's crossed and everything because the public deserves that. And so does the fire department.
Absolutely fair enough. Absolutely fair.
Now, Jeannie, I don't know how long the Zoom lasts before they cut us off. Kevin, how much time do we have?
Kevin,
We're unlimited time. Don't worry about it.
Okay, can I just go through one or two things other on here that I would either like to strike?
please.
Okay, in number 6, the impact upon legitimate local interests. Go down to the area about the 5th line or 6th line down where it says the proposed communications tower facility would have a harmonious relationship with the existing and planned development of contiguous lands. All the way to the end of that sentence, I would just delete that. We can't say that. We have no idea. We haven't heard from the public, and we could certainly not make that assumption. I just don't think it belongs in there. I could not say that the next door neighbor is not going to have some sort of material adverse effect. We may hear from him and he may say he doesn't, but right now we have no way of assessing how people feel about having a tower right there. So I don't think I don't think we need to say that. I have no problems, you know, that the communication services is essential. The other part of that sentence that I would take out or change is with the majority of 9/11 emergency calls generated from wireless phones. Has anybody got statistics to show that the majority of calls come from come from cell phones, or that trends show that landlines are being terminated? Again, that's an assumption that I don't know if we can make as a board. I don't think we need to say that.
Yeah, that's information that we could, if you wanted to see it, absolutely. There's data that shows.
You have that information specific to Saugerties?
Well, no, just in general.
Well, we're talking specific to Saugerties. This is a Saugerties environmental impact statement. So I just didn't think it was, I don't think unless we can prove it with statistics, I don't think we need to say it. I think it's extraneous.
I would also, however, appreciate seeing something that is, even if it isn't specific to Saugerties, that shows some kind of statistically sound trends.
Right. And we can say many.
I would say statistically sound.
Yeah. I have no problem saying many 9/11 calls are generated from wireless. I mean, that's fine to say that, but to say that the majority, you know, I know I'm being a stickler, but I just don't think we can make assertions that are not provable for us.
Yeah, I can give you statistics. You can decide how you want to label it. The statistics show that it's a large majority of the 911.
They are qualified statistics. So I've seen what Scott's seen in that
like
regard. This is a little bit outside of my department, but I have seen those statistics, and they are quoting the sources and the specifics of where those statistics are applicable. So they're very solid statistics.
In fact, the statistics may be provided, Mike, in your analysis.
I do. Yeah, we do have a slide that may be in there. The third slide, maybe.
Mike, we can't
the
see
older
any
document.
slides, so.
Yeah, this is the older document, Scott, before we updated that slide 4 to include that data. But we do have, our corporate has provided us with statistics, and it's very specifically quoting where the data is coming from. So I think that the data that Scott is referencing, if it provides where it's coming from and what it applies to, is relative in those terms. So I think if we provide it in that fashion, that should suffice.
Yeah, we can do that, and then the board can do with it what it wants.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one more, but anybody else, please feel free.
Go ahead, Patty.
Okay, number 4, the effect of local use regulation would have go down to about midway. It starts, the layout of the proposed site has been properly planned with regard to the safety of vehicles and pedestrians, as well as those on neighboring properties and streets. Imposing local land regulations would not change or alter the overall design. I think we have to finesse that because local land use regulations on a normal property certainly would change the design. If the space was there, we would not have such huge setbacks, especially on the one that you know, Scott, that we've talked about, the one on the backside of it that's so close to the neighboring property. So I just think that that needs to be rewritten so it expresses more of our situation and our views. I just wanted to flag that.
I think that we will want to rewrite the final version ourselves,
Yes.
since it is our version, our document. Although we certainly appreciate Mr. Olson's giving us a template.
Right, but this is the first time we've had a chance to talk about it as a board, so.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, anyone else? Well, I have to tell you, I was hoping that we might be able to make a motion tonight to set the public hearing for next month, July 6th. I think that there are enough unknowns that I'm not comfortable making that motion for July 6th.
What unknowns are you thinking of?
All the things that Mike says he'll send us and Scott says he'll send us, and we need time to review those. How fast can you get them to us? The cutoff date would be the 24th of June for the July 6th meeting.
Yeah, what I'm gonna send you is really not difficult. And honestly, the answer is not gonna change. The tower is gonna be located on the property of the Mount Marion Fire Department. So that will be the statement that's provided. We know that for a fact, so that's not gonna be difficult.
Mike, how long will it take for you to get us the things from the industrial zone?
Well, even if, we have to find them. And if worst case scenario, we can't find them just because of the age of them, which I hope that that's not the case, but we can always recreate those.
The age of what?
The documents, our documents that we created they're over a year old. So, with Gmail and different things, you can't always find everything. So even worst case scenario though, if I have to recreate them, that's not a problem. I could do that, in a week or so. So I don't really see that being a problem to be able to get that information out to you as quickly as possible.
We know we would like one on Industrial Road. There's vacant property back there. And that's very close, probably the closest portion of the industrial zone to the firehouse. And then Jeannie, that one that we went to that's right over the railroad tracks, is that the one we were thinking of?
No, I was thinking of Tower Road,
Okay.
which is part of,
Yep. Is there room there for a tower? I don't even think there
part of
is.
their parking lot.
Yeah, but that's gonna be their parking lot.
Part of,
You could do it. I leave it to you.
Do you have specific addresses for us to consider so we're not guessing or just show something on a map?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Tower Road runs between Glasgow Turnpike and Kings Highway. About, what, a quarter mile down from the firehouse? And it is labeled very clearly Tower Road. It belongs to, what's the Tower Industries and
Market Tech.
Marker Tech.
Sorry, there was interference. Can you say that again?
It belongs to Marker Tech.
Okay.
Not the road. The road is a Saugerties Road,
Right.
town of Saugerties Road. But it runs between Kings Highway and Glasgow Turnpike,
Hey, Scott,
or the
before you
railroad
do
track.
prop, do you
I'm
have
sorry?
site availability of those locations? Have you looked at that? Your site availability people?
I don't know who's talking.
It's Ron.
Oh,
It's Ron.
Ron.
I was asking if typically they have their real estate people, just like with the industrial zone. I had proposed that or said that, but I had no idea if that was you need three things. You need a willing landlord, you need it zonable, and you can build on it. So is there a possibility that we know we have a willing landlord at the fire station, but are those other stations, have you investigated those at all?
Are you talking to us, the ZBA?
Scott, talking to Scott.
No, we don't know whether that land is even available.
If it's not available, then it's not site, right?
Well, yeah, but we don't know, and that's the whole process of, I mean, Mike will give you the information, but it'd be a shame if this sends us away from the fire department, because then you're also looking at a long time before you see any results out there. We have to go renegotiate leases for new properties.
No, can't we just get to see whether or not it works as a viable alternative before?
We're gonna provide that, but Scott was just answering. Ron was alluding to the fact that there's a lot more to it in the development process than just the RF analysis, so.
We understand that.
The reason we asked for it was just to substantiate the claim that there isn't an alternative. I guess if we're all surprised and it is a viable alternative, then we have to revisit it. But Ron, we're not asking them to go negotiate anything or talk to anyone. We just want to see the data.
Okay. Fine. Great. Just prop them from the two sites. The tower, I mean, I remember looking at the Tower Road site when I first did this analysis, and I said, gee, is there anything there? And I didn't realize there was any property. Once again, I'm not a land use person, but I did see, why do they call it Tower Road? Right. And then I saw the site where the school buses are parked on satellite maps. And I said, wow, that could be a good place because there's nothing out there. But it's fine. Just prop those sites. And then if they look like they work, then you can worry about the other end. But I guess the first thing, do they even work? And that works for me perfectly, because if they don't work, you know what? They don't work.
Okay, what is the will of the board?
Well, it
Want
depends.
to try to set a public hearing, because once we do that, if we cancel it, we're going to have to re-advertise, send letters out again.
I would just like to know from Mike if he could get that to us before the time that we need it so that we could take a look at it.
By the 24th.
Yeah, absolutely. By the 24th, you will have that information. Yes.
But then I have to turn it around and review that. So, and I promise that I will review that within, 2 days. In fact, if you do it before the 24th, I will get right on it and then get a report to the board straight away, so that there's no time delay. That's not my purpose.
My goal will be to get that information at the very latest to Ron by the 19th. That way he has the weekend and the beginning of the week to review it. That's worst case scenario.
Excellent.
For me, sounds like a plan.
Then Jeannie, I would like to make a motion that we set a public hearing.
Okay, I'll second it. With the understanding that you won't let us down, guys.
It's on my calendar, so there's no way we're going to let you down.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Patty?
Yes. Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Holly?
Yes.
And Joe? Okay, we're going to set, I'm sorry, yes?
Was he a yes? I couldn't hear him.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Okay, as I said, the submission date is the 24th. We will get to you, Scott, a notice and a map, Kevin,
Yeah,
correct?
I have a map, the instructions and the spreadsheet, as well as the sample letter that can be sent out. Now, I'm not sure if it has to be tweaked, given everything that's considered. So, I can send all of those four materials, that is the map, the spreadsheet, the sample letter, and the instructions to you, Scott. And if you make any changes, I would ask that you forward those to Jeannie and Patty for their perusal. Does that make sense, Jeannie?
Yes, actually, I want to tweak it before it goes to Scott.
Okay, so I'm going to send all of those materials to Jeannie, and she will review, and then she can take care of the rest.
Okay. You have to have them sent, certified, returned, receipt requested, mail at least 10 days before. I'm sure you know that, Scott.
You got it.
I had a feeling you'd been there before.
Just a few times.
And then Scott, since we are likely to be meeting by this same sort of WebEx thing again, could you make sure that Kevin gets the names of all of the people that returned the and so that we know who was contacted and who okay.
Yes, what we typically do is we provide an affidavit of mailing of the notice, which will include a copy of the notice that went out, copies of the actual receipts for certified mail that are sent, and any of the, I think they're still called green cards that are returned, although I think we do it through the post office now, so it's not actually a green card, but yes.
Good. Okay. And then fire department folks, you'll let your people know in case they want to know about the public hearing and they can attend as well. Okay.
Scott, we don't call them green cards anymore. We call them recipient cards or receipt cards.
I figure that's the case. I'm getting too old.
Okay.
All right, but I have
Sarah just got it.
One last thing, just in case, if Mike gets the propagation maps and you want him to go through the board and then to me, I mean, I think Mike and as also Scott have my email address. And if they just send me the PDFs, and if they don't look good, I'll let them right away that perhaps they can send me hard copies. I'll still be here, although we are going to be venturing back to COVID-infected Connecticut at the end of the month. I will be able to do that and get that stuff back in like a day's turnaround. That's my goal. There will be a day's turnaround that it will be done and reviewed. There'll no grass grow under this. So if they can send it directly to me, Chairman, that would work. But if they send it to you, then send it to me, then however you'd like to do that.
I would prefer that they send it to you and us simultaneously, if that's okay.
For me.
Yes, but definitely, especially since you may be traveling.
Jeannie? I will.
Also, Dan, of course.
I will get you, I'll begin to amend the determination based on some of the suggestions tonight. And if it needs amending due to some of the material that comes in, we'll get it as close as possible to your cutoff date.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, unless someone else has something else, the zoning board members may stay.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. There's a dog has joined us.
Oh.
Excuse me. Unless you want to stay for boring things like voting on the minutes, you're welcome to leave the meeting.
Thank you all very much.
We will see you
Thank you
next
very
month.
much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Have a
night.
good evening, everyone.
Good night,
Okay,
everybody.
good night.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Need me anymore, do you, Jeannie?
That's all.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye.
Ron.
Thank you.
Bye, Ron.
Bye.
Bye.
Care.
Good
Stay
night,
well.
Jim.
The dog disappeared.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
You
Henry,
okay?
if you come back, you can make a motion to adjourn.
Jeannie, did we vote on the, yeah, never mind. We did vote on it. Forget it. Ignore me.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Um, not yet, not yet, Henry. I assume everyone has read the minutes of our last meeting, May 4th.
Mm-hmm.
If so, would someone like to make a motion unless there are any changes?
I would like, I have a few corrections.
Okay,
Mr. Agiats, his name is spelled differently a couple of times, so I think we should pick one and make it consistent. I don't know how his name is spelled, but it's spelled several different ways in the minutes.
The application.
Okay. Just in case he sees them, I don't want him to think we were guessing. And then there was, Alvy asked who applicants spoke at the, there are two answers to the same question. Jeannie asked who it was who they spoke to, and then Alvy asked who the applicant spoke to, and then the very next sentence, Jeannie asked who they spoke to. One of those should go away. I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was. Either Alvy or Jeannie, but not both.
Shelby.
Okay.
Okay.
And then there was one other thing on page 5, where it was Kevin noted that the letters went out prior to the change in the meeting format, but it was noted that Scott sent his instructions to tell people to go to the town website. I just wanted to note that he saved his letters to put the correct date of the meeting on his cards that he sent out. The others didn't because they sent them out earlier. He waited, so he had the correct date, so that was not an issue. That's it.
Okay.
On page 3,
Oops.
above new business, the paragraph that starts, Patty asked for the applicant in. The third sentence says, he said he sent out 43 letters and only was returned as undeliverable. I think it's missing probably the word one.
One.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion to accept them with the changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes with changes.
Second.
Second, Tim, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
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 and Joe? Okay. I would just comment that trying to get minutes from the transcript from WebEx
It's fun.
must have been a real challenge.
Funny.
I don't know how many people read them, but they were both confusing and amusing. Patty's name was changed about 4 times, I believe.
And Joe was, it was almost like Yo-Yo Ma. I'm trying to say Joe Mayon, it was Yo-Yo Ma. It was funny.
It was May, yes,
Well, the good thing about,
so many ideas.
although the transcription is off, the recording obviously is verbatim. And what's good is that I had some internet connectivity issues tonight, and so I will be able to go fill in those blanks with the recording. So all is well.
Very good. Very. Is there any other business anyone would like to discuss? If not,
Quite a bit of confusion on the part of Verizon. That's all I can say, Gene.
I wanted to say, Patty, thank you for reading this findings document so carefully because I agreed with every one of your comments.
Yeah, I have some more, but I didn't think I mean, as it gets down to it, we should just make it our document.
I agree.
Adjectives about how, there's things, very complimentary adjectives about Verizon. That's not our place to put that stuff in.
Nope.
So I'm like nixing all of that stuff and making it a real business document from us, from our perspective. If we say something in the document, it's got to be true. It cannot be their version of truth. It's got to be our truth.
You're 100% correct, Patty.
Because it is our document.
It's our document.
Yes.
So, okie dokie.
Right. If nothing else, but Holly, I agree with you. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Woman's job as usual.
Everybody's hair is getting long.
Yeah.
I had mine in a ponytail yesterday.
I'm thinking of doing the same thing.
Okay, if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. Gene.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Right, and all, and thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
And
You all.
Thank you, Patty. Very good meeting.
Bye.
thank you, Ron.
Jeannie, check your email. I'm going to send you the documents you can forward to Scott, okay?
I shall. Thank you very much.
Great review, Patty.
Again, Kevin, thank you. You're great.
Patty,
Oh,
All right,
yeah,
thanks.
Kevin, thanks so much. It works really well now. I'm so used to it. I don't want to go back to anything else.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night.
Have a good night. I'm going to shut us down.
Okay.
Bye now.
I can't get out of it.